Hey, what's up, guys? Steve Mayeda with TSL Live Q&A number 3. Today we got something which is actually, once again, cool international stuff. And this email came to me in a totally different way. And this is actually one of the reasons why I love doing what I do, because this is a dude who actually watched my interview with Eric Everhard, good friend of mine, amazing guy, and actually he would be a great guy to have in on this question. And he messaged me and sent me a few messages back over YouTube, and then basically sent him an email with some of the answers that I got, and we got into this dialogue. And what we started talking about was sex and sexual health and sexual satisfaction, and got into this crazy dialogue, okay? And one of the things that I'm chiming in here, and I'm just going to paraphrase because there are a lot of emails and a lot of stuff written, but basically we were talking about circumcision, talking about he got into his experiences with ayahuasca and opening up his mind and his body and all that sort of stuff, and then finding sexual satisfaction and getting in touch with that energy. And for him, it got a little bit erratic, and he started experimenting with different things, ejaculating multiple times a day, not ejaculating, holding on to it, and getting into a whole bunch of different, crazy experimentations with sex, but searching for the sexual satisfaction. Let me tell you something here, all right? I love emails about this because it's about sex, and we need to have this dialogue about sex more. And one of the reasons why we get so confused about it is, and make a big deal about it, is we do not normalize it. Sex is the most normal thing that you can do. Look, I don't know, if you want to do a bunch of stuff, and this is one of the things that we talk about at TSL, the behavior of sex is not wrong. It is your expression and communication is the only thing that will make that, fulfilling or whatever. So actual sexual behavior is not a bad thing. Watching porn, can be a bad thing if you're not connecting with yourself or with other people, but it doesn't necessarily, if you have a porn addiction problem, that is the roots of it. That is the very tip the very tip of just the tip of your problem. It's not something which is the entirety. And to think that it is absolutely wrong. And a lot of the solutions for porn addiction out there and the opinions that people have are from people who aren't having sex and people who haven't found a level of sexual clarity and functionality and normalization. So let's take a few steps back. Our goal at TSL is to normalize social behavior and sexual behavior, and that we were born to do it, that it is your natural function of what you were made to do, okay? So that means your urge, wanting to have sex, wanting to pursue sex, having an erection, having the ideas and thoughts and desires towards a woman's body, or maybe, a man's body, or if you're a woman, a man's body, or a woman's body, whatever, but your desires and urges are part of that natural function, that natural draw. And where we get into the dysfunction of sex is when we can't let that fluidly speak, when we can't let that exchange. And when we hold on to it, that's where we start going like, oh my God, I have to do this, or I'm bad because of that. Or in order for me to have a sex life, I need to be this ridiculous human being or do it in this exaggerated way, right? And one of the things is our sexual language doesn't actually start until we're adults. But our general emotional language happened when we were from 1 to 5, when we were allowed to make mistakes. And for some reason, in our culture, in many cultures around the world, we don't see that we're allowed to make mistakes sexually. And man, that is a crime. So let's just get into this. How do we get sexually healthy? How do we become somebody that can, learn to express in those ways? All right. And I'm going to actually include in this post some of the quick guides that we have for Bang Radio on the subject on sexual health. They actually come from a lot of TSL material. And hey, they come from the same source. It's all TSL, right? But basically, the guide to sexual health is that it's fundamental that it's your expression. Okay, that who you are is one of the most important things. And being able to project that authentically is key, all right? You have to be you. And right now, from what you described to me, is like, hey, man, I'm not satisfied. I have this urge. I want to do better. I want to connect and unite with women in, more intense ways. And you know what? Sometimes I find that with, I'm going to paraphrase here for some privacy, but, sometimes I find that, meeting girls in bars. Sometimes I find that, well, possibly watching porn. Sometimes I find that, well, visiting prostitutes. Those things are fine. Now, the law may be against them or whatever. And if you do those, if you do anything in an excessive way and it limits your expression, it's going to be bad. But those behaviors and those urges, you need to start somewhere. All right. And you need to look and examine those. And if your pursuit of those is going to harm people or maybe break some laws that you don't want to have consequences towards, then, you have to take a few steps back. You can't do that. So sex, when it's causing harm or causing a disconnect, is not sex. It's another action or it's a distortion of that. But sex, when it is a connection and, it is an expression and it is exchanging with somebody, which is the second thing, actually is, there's no problems with that. And you can't see that there is. This happens all the time when in our social lives and who we are as a person and who we are as an expression, we freaking think that it's not appropriate. Or in our social lives, we're this nice professional person. But in our sexual lives, we unleash, and maybe we have different characteristics. Maybe we get a little bit more rough. Maybe we get a little bit more violent. Maybe we get a little bit of more, of whatever it is. Maybe we get a little bit softer and less aggressive. You have to realize they're two different languages and they have to express to equalize and become one thing. The second thing is that we got to exchange. That's what we were talking about. If it's not exchanging, then it's not sex. The other thing is that I'd say is that it's got to be physical. I can have sex with somebody through a dialogue, through presence, through all those sorts of things. And maybe I have sex with 20 or 30 people throughout the day in that way. But if I am not having sex physically, actually physically engaging and physically releasing and sharing with somebody, I'm going to be unfulfilled. And that happens a lot, especially being in a monogamous relationship. I might exchange and feel sexuality from multiple people throughout the day and then release and experience that physically with just one person. Okay. The other thing too that is really important that I would say for sexual health is that it can't be alone. Too much masturbation, which is where the porn thing gets into. But again, porn's not the problem. If we're just isolating sex with ourselves, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's going to happen. I love it, man. I do it all the time, man. I'm a connoisseur and a professional. Well, I wish I was a professional. I wish I got paid for masturbating. But I love it, man. It's a great thing. Get to know your body. Get to know it. But know that it's actually incomplete without it being physical and with somebody else. And the last thing is one of the most important, and this is where we get into with sex cults and how sex becomes a manipulation. I love the idea of orgasmic meditation. I think everybody can do it, but a lot of groups that practice that turned it into a cult and turned it into a rule and turned it into all these things. Guess what? The fifth thing about sexual health, and you can read them in the PDF that I'll attach to it, is this. Is that there are no rules. The only rules are made by you. They're not rules by society. They're not rules by your past. They're rules by what you and the expression of the other person shape into. And when it gets so particular that it can't be a certain way and judgment comes into play and guilt and shame and all that sort of stuff, man, that's not sex, or that's not sexual health. That's sex in some other way. And let me tell you where this comes from. When you have a lot of sex, and this is where guys who are experienced with sex and sexuality and maybe even got into some addiction like myself and were able to get to a place where they could equalize and regulate, is that sex is, first off, we'll talk about sex addiction in another one, but sex is a beautiful constant. And when you have a lot of it, you realize that when you're having it, you just become normal. You just become clear. You just become relaxed. You stop having to fuck. You stop having to fit a role. You stop having to be some thought, some idea, or some image or archetype, and you just exist within the body of someone else, or maybe bodies of other people. And it becomes a beautiful thing. You can feel jealousy towards someone else, but then when you start into that sexual mode, you regulate, you equalize, you see that there isn't any of that, and you see that there isn't any guilt or shame, and there isn't judgment or regulation that can come from sex. There's only expression, and how that expression cannot be like this, but actually sync up with somebody else. And sometimes those movements are fast, sometimes they're slow, but it's always normal. And so we have to get to that point of sexual normalization. What I would say for yourself, if you're experimenting with a lot of things and you're thinking of all these particulars and compartmentalizing, I would say that's a thing that I run into a lot with guys, and what I get into myself when I'm not sexually satisfied. I make a checklist and I try and move towards that. And those are all good because when we don't have a point of reference, we need one. But we need to start getting in the expression. Go up and talk to somebody. Go up and say hello. Go up and feel sexual presence with them. Go up and if you have an urge that might be whatever it is sexually, go out and try and show that presence with your body language. Now, if that urge is to, go and ravage them and have sex with them and pull your dick out and shove it in them, you can be thinking that. But if you're in public, of course, it's probably not the best idea to happen unless you want to spend a couple nights in jail and, have some charges on you and all that sort of stuff. But what you want to do is go up and talk to them and figure out, how can I translate that within this social setting with my tonality? How can I translate that in this social setting with my body and my presence? And then in this particular question, because like I said, we had a lot of emails, if you're sexually interactive with somebody, let's say you're laying with a woman that you're sexually active with. Let's say you're, in whatever situation. And in that, you're sexually expressing with them, and you can't get an erection, or you don't feel the connection, or you don't feel the elicitation. Stop trying to be somebody else. And we'll talk about this surely in other questions with erectile dysfunction and all this sort of stuff. But try and be calm in that moment and just be normal in it, because that is the sexual expression. What is keeping us from satisfaction, from performance, and from being happy with sex is not the result or the specific act. It's not you going, yeah. It's not just your orgasm. Those things will come. But what it is the constant that you have with that person and the expression that you have in that sexual moment. Okay? So sometimes it's not going to be your dick in her pussy. It's going to be you sitting there and just enjoying her. And it's not that you have to overcompensate and just eat her pussy. By all means, do that. But it's about being able to exist in that moment and be comfortable. Get back to the self-expression. Get back to the exchange. Get back to it being physical. Get back to not being in your head. Don't make it you being alone. Be with somebody else. And get back to discovering and defining the rules and the expressions that you're having with somebody. Sex isn't about anything out here. It's about everything within you and how it gets reshaped and connected by somebody outside of you. This is why masculinity and femininity are so important. Because in order for them to be fully reached, they need to exchange. All right? So cool stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. Man, I know you came in through the YouTube page. You weren't in through the social dynamics funnel and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to send you the Better Man's Guide. I hope you like it. I'm going to assume you speak English, even though you live in Spain. And if you do live in Spain, we have a bunch of guys who actually are very familiar with TSL that you can meet up with and hopefully talk to and get you all sunk in with the different mentalities that we have. And hey, other guys out there, I hope you enjoyed this. Email me, send me your messages. We'll upgrade at some point to a site that is a little bit more conducive to that. But until now, Steve at The Sexual Life. If I make you one of these, I'll send you a cool gift and make a video, and hopefully it'll help you. And even though this video may not have been specifically made for you, use it, live it, and live your life and own it.